Indiana Jones, Indiana It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. Indiana Jones, Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute. This is the podcast where we discuss not only every minute of the movie Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but the minutes between minutes. I'm Tom Taylor.
I'm Gerald Christopher, sitting by Lake Erie, Porter.
And I'm Jamie Benning, and I'm over here in the UK, where I live.
Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while, hasn't it? I was trying to remember when we last did this.
It's been long enough that the last time we had you on for Last Crusade, you were just the cool guy from your Filmumentaries videos, but now I don't think you had your show by then. Your awesome Filmumentaries podcast.
Yeah, that's right. I started that during lockdown number 1. I can always remember lockdown number 1. I can't remember 2 and 3 really, or 4.
They kind of blurred
one
together.
I'm sure of.
Yeah.
And I'd lost all my work, and I thought I need something to do, so I created a podcast. And where am I now? Episode 52 or something, which is nothing compared to you guys.
Oh well, yeah, but you have a little more substance. Let's just say that. In your shows. You've been interviewing some very, very awesome people who, fans of this show would know and love. Like I just listened to Lauren Peterson recently, the model guy from ILM. And you've got just a slew of people like that. Walter Murch. I don't
I mean, that one still kind of blows my mind. I just said to my wife, I'm going to try and get Walter Murch on the podcast. She's like, yeah, go for it. And I just contacted the director of a documentary he just worked on. And he said, I'll pass on your details. And I also asked Paul Hirsch, who I'd interviewed, the editor of Star Wars and Empire and lots of De Palma stuff. And they happened to email Walter on the same day as he was looking at his laptop. These 2 emails appeared saying Jamie Benning would like to talk to you. And
I guess I better.
And there we went. Yeah. So, I've been very lucky, really.
That's amazing.
Well, and the Raiders, all the filmumentaries that you've done, the Raiders one, and I mean, you go, there's a deep dive, and then you go like Mariana's Trench dive into this stuff.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to ask you is, does it affect or change the way that you view the movie after you've done all the research?
At the time it does, Raiding the Lost Ark took me something like 14 months, I think, to do from start to finish. Once it's released, I'm able to watch the movie as I've always been able to watch it. I kind of forget all of my fun facts, which is a kind of, I have to do it consciously the first time I watch it again after that. But maybe the second or third time, I kind of hold back, because what I would normally do in those situations when I was watching them, if they were on TV, if I'd put in the Blu-ray or the DVD, is I'd tell my kids all those little things I knew about that movie. And now that I've done Raiding the Lost Ark, that's there in another sort of, I've compartmentalized that kind of need to spout all my little fun facts.
Oh, nice.
So now I'm just back to enjoying the movies, which is great. I toyed with doing Temple of Doom. I did actually start doing Temple of Doom.
Oh, wow.
Some years ago, but I didn't get much further than kind of 15-20% in, and I figured that there probably wasn't enough material out there for me to make a full thing.
Interesting.
And then I thought maybe I could do like a 45-minute version, 50-minute version, but then a lot of the resources that I got hold of for Temple of Doom were terrible quality.
Oh, really?
Well, of course, things were shot on film in the 70s, and everything was broadcast on TV in the 80s. So it's like trying to find old TV, VHS and Betamax recordings or Betamax recordings.
I wonder why, besides the quality, I wonder why there was just so much less stuff for Temple of Doom.
Yeah,
would there be less stuff for Last Crusade as well? I don't know if you've been...
there's a lot of stuff for Temple of Doom, but there's a lot of repetition as well. So you'll just come across the same old clips. Like, I think by then, EPKs, electronic press kits, were kind of sent out to broadcasters with the same old stuff on them, whereas with the earlier movies that I did, you'd find that certain things were shown only in Sweden or Denmark or Germany, or
Oh, wow.
and then when you put them together, you'd find I've just made a 10-second sequence out of these, 3 or 4
Yeah.
different bits.
That's cool.
Yeah, but maybe, I'm not saying no. Maybe one day I'll go back to Temple of Doom. But I kind of got to the point, where I thought I need to make one of these in an official capacity now. I think what I can do kind of speaks for itself.
Right.
I need to
Why am I
get
doing
paid
this
for the
for
next
free?
one. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well, and you use the word toyed with Temple of Doom, which I think is appropriate. I think that's what one does.
Much like
Yeah.
podcasters
Toy
and
with
filmmakers.
I did toy with it. Yeah. I couldn't come up with a good title, if I'm honest. Raiding the Lost Ark. What? Templing the Doom.
Templing.
That one might be toying with Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah, or yeah, sure.
Toying with the
Doom.
temple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I did have one. I did have a good title at one point. Anything Goes, I think it was going to be.
Hey, there you go. It's got a nice ring to it. Well, now we get to toy with Crystal Skull, or at least 1 minute of it. And this is minute 113 of Crystal Skull, and this begins with that flying saucer rising up out of the ground and bringing lots of rocks with it, and it ends a minute later with the valley it leaves behind filling up with water. And last minute, I should say, by the way, before we launch into this, you might even notice that Pete Mummert is not here. This is a ramshackle show. We're doing it as we can. We're limping to the finish line. Jerry's literally in a dumpster in a Home Depot parking lot on Lake Erie. We got Jamie comfortably in England, and I'm I don't know. I'm sitting here in a guest room in Darien, Connecticut. So it's all
I'm missing my evening dinner for this, by the way.
Oh no!
After how many?
The two of you did a lot better than I did.
At least we're inside. We're in buildings. But yeah, we're sorry Pete couldn't join us, but he shares his thoughts and things.
He's ramshackle as well.
He's ramshackling somewhere else, on his own time. But yeah, the last minute with Pete and our guest, who was that? Matt? Yeah. I don't know. It's all out of order. But yeah, we were talking about the music in this scene, that it started off with in the last minute, there was this kind of, almost like Close Encounter-ish kind of hum to the music, and this kind of eerie, kind of otherworldliness, and then it went into this kind of more traditional kind of sweeping thing, and here we get more of that kind of bells ringing, triumphant sort of thing. And I'm wondering if that is the right music for this moment. Are we supposed to feel that, oh, there they go, the aliens that were so mysterious and so that we love so much, or so, it feels like we're supposed to have a stronger positive feeling for these aliens than maybe I do, or I don't know. How do you guys feel?
Well, it has that Steven Spielberg wonderment thing going on. Yeah, which we talk a lot with the Close Encounters and ET and that stuff. And the music is manipulative here.
It kind of is, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like lied to a little bit, because Tommy, when you mention that, why are we supposed to like these aliens?
Yeah, exactly what I've written in my notes here. What am I feeling at this point?
Right.
Okay, the music is making me feel like there's something triumphant, but I don't really know what's happening. I don't know what's just happened in the previous minute, if we talk about it in terms of the podcast, or why.
Right.
And I'm kind of just looking at Twister meets Plan 9 from Outer Space, or The Day the Earth Stood Still. I'm not sure. I mean, Indies looks as confused as we do.
Yeah, poor guy.
Oh, it's not
like the aliens. It's not like the aliens just touched our forehead and said, "I'll be right here," or something, and then flew off and we had a tearful goodbye, or something.
You've given up your life to see what's off in another dimension.
Right? Yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss's character.
Say goodbye to Terry Garr and your kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so what? I mean, we talk about the gift that they give them, and then they somehow bestow upon, I guess, Indy, or Ox gets his brain back, or whatever the hell happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me there, Tommy. I don't know. Are we supposed to be happy that we even encountered them? And for that matter, it then makes me think, so am I supposed to be happy at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark with an Old Testament Yahweh God? I mean, am I supposed to be? But they were in Raiders. It's a little dangerous. They
it is. That's more like awe and
Raiders,
like I don't know what just.
Up.
Yeah, Raiders is like I don't know what just happened. I'm glad I wasn't there. You know, I wasn't involved in that. You know, something horrifying happened. Something huge happened. I'm glad the bad guys got defeated. You know, God did what he had to do, I guess. But it's not like, oh, thank you, God, for saving the day. You know?
It's very much on brand with Old Testament, you know, Old Testament, the Lord. And that makes sense. They have to, they push it in the back where it's not going to be discovered for thousands of years. And the government lies and says top men. And you're like, that's fascinating. Mm-hmm. What happens here?
Yeah. I mean, it's not even like it's the triumphant moment of returning to the village and bringing life back, like at the end of Temple of Doom, or, you know, our heroes' adventures are kind of over and off they go into the sunset. I genuinely don't know what to think at this point. I mean, Indy's standing there with rocks swirling around, not only in front of him, but kind of behind him as well. So he seems to be in this kind of perilous situation, but we're completely disconnected from it in a way that we're not in Raiders, because we see this stuff swirling around, and there's, as you say, there's the peril involved there, and he's keeping his eyes shut, and he's telling Marion to keep her eyes shut. Here, we're just kind of, I think everyone, including Indy, is just staring, going, what am I looking at now? You know, it could just as well have been a green screen for us. You know?
We're in the same position as the actors. Yeah,
and he's standing in a very similar position on the other corner of the frame when the nuclear blast goes off at the start of the movie.
Oh yeah,
and it's another situation where you think, should you be standing there?
Right, somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
I know you're an action hero, Indiana Jones, but be careful.
And it's a shame, because I think, you know, during the whole production of it, there was all this talk about, you know, we want to do it in the old-fashioned way and everything else. But we end up with this kind of razzle-dazzle, you know, CGI ending that not only doesn't seem to be relevant to the story, but doesn't seem to be relevant to the kind of, you know, aims they had in making the movie.
Yeah, there's something kind of unearned about everything that's happening. Yeah.
And
I said last time that it's like, you know, I wish that they had stuck with that. And Pete said this too, I think, that wish they had stuck with this, the kind of eerie, ominous kind of music that started off this moment with the, when you're just starting to see the UFO and stuff. I'll call it a UFO. And now I even think that more, like if that kind of music had stayed through the scene, and you're kind of like this kind of weird, kind of ethereal thing, and then Indy standing there like going, what the heck? Then you'd be like, yeah, what the heck? Wow. What the hell was that? Oh my gosh. But instead of like, oh, our friends the aliens took off. Goodbye. Thanks for saving Christmas.
I guess they're sort of setting you up for the fact that they're interdimensional.
I guess
that's the big payoff. That's what you've earned. They're not.
We already knew that, didn't we?
That they're interdimensional?
Yeah, didn't Knox already say that?
Oh,
he did. I'll just tell you, he did.
Yeah. Okay.
And I should say that, like, you know, we did not plan it this way, but as soon as Ox sort of got his marbles back, we've had a stream of British guests on the show. And just as Ox sort of turns back into the Doctor Who we briefly played on the show, he's got a lot of Doctor Who kind of lines, like a portal to another dimension and stuff like that. The space between spaces and stuff. And
it's true. It's
so
true.
I feel like I have to ask you as a Brit, you know, does that tug at your heartstrings? Do you wish that Ox could have been Doctor Who through the whole movie? Indiana Jones meets Doctor Who. Could that have been a good movie?
I think he could have made a great Doctor Who. In fact, I have a very short John Hurt story. I was on the tube once heading to work in London, and he was opposite me.
Oh wow.
And my eyes were kind of flicking between his face and his chest, and his face and his chest, because I thought at any moment now something's going to burst out of him.
Oh my God. But it turned out okay. He was fine.
Yeah, it did turn out
good.
okay. He kind of looked at me and I looked at him, and we both kind of nodded. My nod was a kind of, look, don't worry, I'm not going to do the whole fan thing. And his nod was, thank you for not doing the whole fan thing. This would have been 2004, I guess. So it precedes this film. But yeah, I mean, amazing. And what an amazing actor. And there are some really good actors in this movie, but they don't get to use their skills that much.
I would agree.
I feel, there's something just, there's something in the atmosphere lacking in this film. I always found, like the first time I saw it, I came out just kind of going, just sort of shrugging. I get like this scene. I didn't know what to think. I just kind of felt like I'd had a magician come up to me and do a trick. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know what the trick was. He seemed happy.
Wow. I mean, the thing's in your hand now. Okay.
Yeah.
Neat.
Oh, you seem to be good with that, and I didn't see how you did it.
I wasn't asking for that.
Yeah.
That's a good way that the atmosphere is weird, because like we've had guests on the show and listeners who chimed in that they love this movie, that they it's a lot of people do. Oh, it's my fourth favorite, but it's a good Indiana Jones movie, and I can to a point I get that, and there are moments and but the further you go, these last few weeks on the show have been very like what do we if we take stabs at trying to maybe possibly rewrite things or put a more sensical spin on things, and I don't know if it's helping.
Well, I think like the other three movies, and I guess two of them more so, Raiders and Last Crusade, you kind of forgive all of the little issues in them because they're great movies. Whereas this one, I think there's such a tendency to kind of pick holes in it because it doesn't satisfy it in the way that the other films do. But maybe that's something to do with the time in which it was released. We'd already had, I guess, National Treasure, and we'd had Tomb Raider, and we'd had every other movie trying to copy the template of I guess, the Raiders movies as they get called by the filmmakers. Yeah. And it's very difficult to kind of replicate what they did previously, and it's very difficult, even more difficult to build upon and improve upon what they did previously. Yeah. It's like, I can imagine like Apple have the same problem. Their biggest competitor is themselves. How do they improve on what they've just made, which is pretty perfect? To begin with.
It's funny. I always think about it's like every new iPhone has like a better camera.
Just a little bit better. Just a
little bit better. And it's just, I'm always just like, I mean, the camera on the iPhone 6 was fine.
Yeah.
Like I know I have like I think an iPhone 12, and that camera is a little bit better. And you zoom and it does this, it takes better pictures. But I wasn't left wanting with the iPhone 6.
Yeah.
It's still a picture of my cat.
I mean, if it made toast and put peanut butter on there for me, then maybe I'd be interested.
Sure.
Like it's not doing anything out of the box, and this film doesn't do anything out of the box. And that shot we're looking at now, I think there's like a good 25, maybe even 30 seconds of Indy just staring at this spinning saucer and all the debris around it, and it's probably longer than any other shot in the movie. And it's longer than those shots would have been back in the day as well, because obviously, they were like 3 or 5 seconds, because if we looked at them too long, we'd see the seams and everything. But now we're able to look at it for that long because it does look, in quotes, realistic. Mm-hmm. We kind of lose something. We lose an emotional connection to it, I think.
Yeah. It's like kind of ironic, because if this movie, if this moment was the culmination of what the movie seems to think it is that we're missing, maybe we'd love having that nice long interrupted shot of this moment. And maybe that would really work. Wow, that's nice. They just took the time. They stayed on this amazing image that means something to us because this movie was so awesome. Like I get, you say that like we forgive the negative things about the really excellent movies, and it's kind of the opposite for this one. We're like, well, if this were a good movie, this would be a nice thing.
Yeah, but, and like you said about some of your listeners and contributors talking about it's their fourth favorite indie movie, and it's a good indie movie. I watched it on. I think it was on TV some months ago here in the UK, and I thought, I haven't seen this in a long time. I'm going to give it another go. And I actually quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed seeing Indiana Jones and seeing Marion, and, a few of the other characters weren't too bad. I remember when I first saw it in the cinema that I felt the look was way off. I thought it looked like a commercial. It looked like it was in a studio more so than the other films. It looked like it was kind of almost sort of TV-like in a way, and that kind of took me out of it.
We've been struggling with that from the very beginning, of just like beautiful outside shots that look like they're standing in front of a painted mural of a sunset or something.
Yeah. There's something very odd about it. And I know that the cinematographer sort of went back and looked at those original movies that Dougie Slocum shot and kind of tried to replicate that look, but I don't think it was successful in any way.
No.
So I was kind of taken out of the movie kind of immediately. But like with these new TV series, these Star Wars TV series, I see them as what if kind of situations,
totally. Yeah.
Alternate universe. And it's like, yeah, what would it be like if Indy carried on into his late 60s,
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I view this film, really. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not one of those people who like talks about the canon and all of that with Star Wars.
Right.
But it just sort of feels like someone had another go. It feels like another director had another.
Whether or
go.
not it's canon, it's something that fits in your head. This is your understanding of Indiana Jones, and if it doesn't fit, okay, look at that.
Yeah,
he did that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that would have looked like.
Yeah,
we get. I mean, this shot in this scene, we get Indy flummoxed, which is rare.
It is.
And it's very, very interesting. I think the dynamic between him and Ox is fascinating because we always talk about how Indy either makes stuff up. That's kind of I'll play the part of Pete Mummer today.
Sure.
Indy's just making stuff up because he can't, or Pete always says he's like mansplaining everything.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, but here he doesn't do that at all. He goes, space? And
Right.
Ox steps into the role that normally Indy fills as like the space between spaces.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating that when Indy doesn't know the answers, that's where Ox comes in and really sort of takes over. But what I can't figure out is that that's not in alignment with what sort of how they treat Ox in the movie. Like Indy's so often in charge, except Ox comes in with the skull or with something else, and then Indy kind of brushes him aside or goes like, "Here, give me, I'll do it."
Yeah.
And then here at the very end, Indy doesn't know, but Ox does. And so, again, if Ox is the conduit or the microphone for the crystal skull, why was Indy in charge? Like, I don't know. Why didn't Ox play more of a critical role?
Yeah, I
With
would have loved
regards
that.
to it, he gets sidelined for so much of the adventure that has to do with the skull. And if Ox does know that, why did communicating with the skull make him turn into gibberish?
Yeah.
I think
if he has the answers, he's the guy who knows what's up. What was the block? Why was he taken over? But Indy was why would Indy be of stronger mind than Ox so that he can complete the whole thing and not lose his mind and have the skull talk to him and yet still not know that they're interdimensional beings and where they went?
And what is the answer? Like Ox comes out of it, but what is the answer? The answer is the space in between spaces. And it's like, okay, so we just wasted a whole movie. There is no answer.
Right.
But more than that, I don't buy any of the relationships in this. Like I don't feel like they ever had a relationship.
Well, it's hard for them to express that if Oxy's written as like a babbling, half their weirdo. Which is so frustrating because now that he's back and again he's just spouting Doctor Who lines and stuff. It would have been great if Ox, Indy's old pal, who he revered and who they've had like a kind of falling out over Marion and stuff. It sounds like, or he sort of took Marion's side. That would have been nice to have some interplay and some acting, and for John Hurt to have had something to do this whole time. That would have been really nice.
But that line, not into space, but the space between spaces, is just kind of like. Also known as we don't need to understand, It's,
which is
we have that a bit with Raiders. I guess we don't need to understand fully and have it explained fully, and I guess the same in some of the other movies. But I don't know. It feels slightly more like a punch in the guts. Like you've just watched this movie to find the answer. Just they're on this quest to find the answer, and there's no sort of spiritual enlightenment. There's no kind of tangible answer here. It's just you don't need to understand it. They're doing their thing now, So why were they there in the first place? Why were they here? Why didn't they just do all this before? Why did they have to wait for Indy to come along to it? Just, it feels like one of those things where the plot only develops to kind of satisfy the next plot point, not actually for any particular reason.
I guess the payoff is something along the lines, you're like, okay, so the ancient civilizations were all tied together by aliens that showed up, was it 5,000 years ago or maybe 10,000 years ago, something like that. And we couldn't figure out if they had tied in the Egyptians to this or not. That's kind of the payoff, is that, and they're not even aliens, they're interdimensional beings came down and helped the Uga build this civilization.
Mm-hmm.
And then
we figured that out 40 minutes ago or something. Like that's not like the climax of the movie or anything.
Right. And it still doesn't make sense because then Oriana cut off the alien's head. All right, hang on. If Ox is spouting gobbledygook, up until the alien's head is returned.
Yeah.
Is that all the crystal skull was doing? Was the crystal skull, if Ox is the conduit or the voice piece, the mouthpiece for the skull, or I'm starting to wonder if the crystal skull was just spouting gobbledygook as it looked into everybody's eyes.
Oh, maybe the skull was crazy.
The skull was crazy until it gets its head back, and then it starts speaking in a British accent, and that's what happens. You're like, okay, the head's back on, and now Ox gets his himself back.
Maybe.
Why did Ox lose his mind?
I don't know.
And he does say like a broom to the footprints, right? And you're like, okay, that's a callback to what we have in his Returno cell in the sanitarium.
I did think of that, with like Mutt sweeping up the place or whatever.
Yeah, they swept up the map or whatever. They, he took a broom or a something or other.
Yeah. But this whole thing, like the UFO coming up and bringing a lot of rocks with it, and I guess the rocks then fall and break whatever, dam or whatever was over there, and all the water comes flooding in. Like, it's a neat visual. He says it's like, a broom to their footprints. So, like, in broad strokes, if you don't think about it for a second, you're kind of like, okay, I get it. But then, if you're like, wait, so they planned to bring up a bunch of rocks with them as like a sort of an afterthought as they were taking off, and then those were going to fall just right to break the things, and they had that water. Like, did they land here because there was water right there that would then fill in the thing? And now the Uga, it's a good thing that the Russians killed all the Uga because now their land is ruined anyway. So, like, how much thought went into this or not? I can't tell.
I listened to a review from the time. It was released from one of the biggest film reviews in the UK, a guy called Mark Kermode. And he was talking about how he's got kind of a 50s throwback kind of hairdo, this Mark guy, right? And he's sort of obsessed with his hairdo. And he said, looking at Shia LaBeouf's hair in this movie, he was kind of distracted that it wasn't done properly. And, it didn't really fit. He had this kind of Marlon Brando look, but he's no Marlon Brando, and blah blah blah. He once called Shia LaBeouf like a charisma vacuum. I think he's revised this since he's been in later movies and become a better actor. But his co-presenter on this show that they do, he said, "Look, we're not interested in your obsession with hair, Mark. He said, no. I want to make the point here that the reason I was obsessing over it is because there wasn't anything else to keep my attention in this movie. And this is kind of what we're doing now. We're picking the holes in it because." There's nothing drawing us in. There's nothing to there's no payoff here. Like
it's a lot of stuff that happened, to quote Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, they do all look at it at the end.
I was going to say, like, is this the craziest thing that Indiana Jones has ever seen happen? Because, like, he missed what happened in Raiders at the end. Like, he kind of gets what happened, but he didn't see it. And like Temple of Doom, he sees some glowy rocks and stuff. He sees a guy get his heart ripped out and stuff. He's alive, and later heals his dad with some water from a cup and stuff. But like just seeing a UFO rise out of the ground and then disappear and stuff. And is that the most nuts thing he's ever seen?
God, that's a great question.
I don't know.
I remember all of those novels that came out. Like, I remember going to Forbidden Planet in the 90s and just seeing all these Indiana Jones novels. I wonder if we include those, maybe it's not the craziest thing.
Maybe, yeah. It's been to Atlantis and whatever and stuff, apparently. And so maybe.
Well, all right. So what would be, okay, a guy's heart ripped out, that's gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that can happen and has happened in a way, you know.
The fact that he's still alive, I guess that's pretty weird and
disturbing. It's pretty weird. And then you go, okay, so if you walk through a town with rocks, and all of a sudden the greenery just starts to blossom immediately.
Yeah,
that would be kind of interesting.
That's pretty huge.
Yeah, that's pretty huge. And
that's exactly how they would have done that today, by the way. They would have had a CGI effect of like everything flourishing around him
as Indy is walking into town. It's like in line with his
footsteps. It could just be the placebo effect, right? They just need these rocks because, you know, they need it to focus on, you know.
Yeah, they get them off their butts and they go cultivate the land a little better.
Yeah.
Okay, healing a gunshot wound with holy water.
Mm-hmm.
That would be pretty badass, but
and it's his
dad. I don't know if that would be
as
strange as seeing a UFO rise up out of the ground and then disappear, and then you go space, and somebody goes, "No, the space between spaces." That might be, yeah.
Yeah, I do have to mention we can't have this conversation without mentioning the look of awe and delight that he has in the map room when that whole stuff with the Staff of Ra actually works.
Yeah,
and it makes a beam of light that shows him where the Well of Souls is. He's pretty blown away.
Finding the Lost Ark would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of a response to a mechanical wonder that they've created this room and they've created this hole and they've created this staff that sends this beam of light. It's not a kind of out of world situation.
That's very true. Yeah.
However, there are sort of out of world aspects to Raiders at the end, I guess. But I don't know. This feels like a much bigger leap, doesn't it? Than even falling out of a plane with an inflatable raft.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel generally about the? You know, like George Lucas pitched us as like, you know, saucermen from Mars and stuff like that. Do you think that, is there anything inherently wrong with Indiana Jones versus the spacemen or anything, or Indiana Jones meets the UFOs? Like, does that 50s science fiction idea fit with Indiana Jones or not?
Jerry?
Jerry answered already months ago. Years ago?
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it kind of, when I heard that was what was coming, I kind of did balk at it a little bit. I was, of course, you know, I just wanted more of the same, I guess, and that's probably the reason I didn't like The Last Jedi and things like that. So, and you know, I can take the criticism that comes with that, but therefore, don't make another one if it's not going to work for the majority of the audience. I mean, how did this film actually do in terms of box office? I think it was 185 million budget. I think I saw earlier.
I think it did well, better than people assume based on the reaction. Yeah,
I think because everybody who likes Indiana Jones would go and see it and take their.
You're definitely going to go see an Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, even if it doesn't get glowing reviews, you're going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, like, even though, like, with this, I always sort of compare to the Star Wars prequels, I guess, you know, given the big gap and everything. I came out of those thinking, these movies are not for me. They're for a new generation of fans. Whereas this isn't really that. It isn't for a new generation of fans, unless they had done the Shia LaBeouf kind of Indiana Jones switch thing where he puts his hat on one, which we all dreaded, of course.
Right.
So I kind of wonder who it's for in a way. I think maybe it's more for George and Stephen than it is for anyone else.
In a way, it kind of, I mean, I think a lot of the problems with it are those two guys with two hands on the script, pulling it back and forth, like science fiction, a little less science fiction, more fantasy, getting in the jungle, less 50s science fiction, you know. So yeah, in a way it is for them, but maybe not in the way either of them intended.
Yeah, and if you watch like the Plinkett review of it, you know, he talks about the lack of Indiana Jones murdering people, which I don't take that point. And also that he's not a badass in this. He's just this kind of bumbling old man. And again, I don't really agree with that, because I think, there should be a bit of character development, and he should be a bit more bumbling, and he should be less capable of doing the things that he used to do, and hence his son coming into the fold. Spoiler. I think it just has more to do with the fact that it's not a good script, and it's also executed fairly badly. I found the humor very sort of cringeworthy compared to the humor in the other movies is kind of situational. It kind of drives you to the next scene. Here it just seems to be kind of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for. You can edit this bit out.
It's a lot of quippy dialogue. It's a lot of here, let's have them say something that is supposedly funny in this little argument they're having or something.
It doesn't really add to the character, I guess, is what I'm saying. I think it just kind of, it's there for this. Oh, we need a piece of humor here. Insert humor here. Yeah. It is my fourth favorite Indiana Jones movie. I wonder if it will remain that way.
That's a good question. I mean, what are you hoping for from an Indiana Jones 5?
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine earlier, who you can listen to me interview on my podcast, Jim
Awesome.
Maxwell. He's a map painter. He works on that show Vikings, Emmy Award-winning map painter. And we were just chatting about it, and he was like, I just hope to God that Indy doesn't meet the Beatles or something, because they can do that, they can kind of, do the de-aging and all that kind of stuff, and the deep fake and everything.
Right. Timothy Leary or something, or
I mean, there's more chances of him meeting Buzz Aldrin, I guess, given the bits and bobs that have been around. But I hope that the new film is kind of firmly grounded on terra firma. Yeah.
I hold a lot of hope for it. I think that it will be. I think that whoever is in charge of Disney does this stuff now, right? Yeah. So I think they've I don't know. I think they know. I'm sure they know how Crystal Skull landed.
Yeah.
And that if they were to do something like that again, enough time certainly has passed. I think they're going to be like, we can't have that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, James Mangold has got some serious kahunas to kind of take this project on, because he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, really.
That's true.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, do you think am I a bad fan, Jamie, if I'm a little bit excited that Steven Spielberg is not directing it?
No, I think it's a good opportunity for somebody else to take it further.
Okay.
I think of again another Star Wars comparison. You think of Mandalorian. Those guys were able to take the idea of Boba Fett, ultimately not spoil any of that, and create a new character and let us kind of live in those worlds again. And then they went and made Boba Fett. I mean,
they did not learn their lesson. They did not learn from their own success.
So you say, Jerry, that lessons have been learned, but they're not always remembered. Is the problem.
Right, by the right people. Yeah.
But this being the next one, I think it. I think. I don't know. I think it's going to be really good.
I hope so. I do hope so.
I have a good feeling.
I think there's been a big shift, and if you're the next person who does have the cojones to take on this project, you're probably going to be very serious about it.
Yeah. I think that, they probably have to come to terms with the fact that they can't better Marvel movies for action set pieces,
right. That's true.
Not that I don't particularly enjoy those, I must admit, but I think, there is a kind of a formula there that people will expect it to go by the first three movies. So they're going to have to, subvert that somewhat, I would say. Gone are the days of being able to have an indie girl, like a Bond girl kind of thing. I suppose 4 proved that. But I kind of want to know Indy's motivation to continue to do the things he's doing, rather than there's another film, so he's going to do it. I'm not talking about Harrison. I'm talking about Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Sure.
I want to know why is he going to be taken out of his college comfortable college office and thrown across the world somewhere. So I kind of want to see a bit of character development there
Mm-hmm.
beyond I'm getting too old for this sort of thing, kind
Right.
of lines. And that doesn't necessarily mean introducing a new, young, exciting character. I think, he can still hold his own, Harrison Ford,
Yeah.
but I think he just has to do it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he absolutely could. I mean, look, he could be, he could be like, he could be like his dad.
Mm-hmm.
He could be like, that just what, he's not doing so much action, but he's he has the artifacts and he's the expert, and lean more into the the sexy academic here, indie.
Yeah.
That was
Both
his
of
own. I mean,
Our eyebrows
that's what
went up then.
started.
I know. Sexy
Well, I mean,
academic.
yeah.
Oh.
That's where he originally
That's Jerry's
got
Halloween
the love.
costume. Sexy academic.
He originally got the Love You.
That's true.
Yeah, for in the classroom. It wasn't with the bullwhip.
Yeah. That's why I sort of want Phoebe Waller-Bridge to be one of his students, but there's zero kind of love ya business. Like there's he's like on an adventure with one of his students, but there's zero like romance or anything. It's just like, all right, come on, I'll show you the ropes, something.
But you look at like the love scene in Raiders. It's got great lines in it. It's got great moments in it on the boat there. And I watched Top Gun Maverick the other day, and I was saying to my wife, actually, the love scene in that is actually really quite cute. It's just like nicely lit, and they're chatting together in bed and they're laughing, and we don't need the steamy.
All right.
Sure. We don't. And also, Jennifer Connelly's sort of age appropriate for Tom Cruise, and I think probably. Sure. Indiana Jones is at that point now where, he does need somebody with wrinkles. I suppose he did that in this movie we're talking about.
Yeah,
but
that's true. That was a plus
but just going back to James Mangold for a moment. I mean, you look at the movies he's done. He did that Le Mans 66. I think it was called Ford versus Ferrari in other territories. Some good action pieces in that. You did Logan, some good set action in that. But he did Walk the Line as well, which, is an entirely different movie. So I think there's potential there. I do. And 310 to Yuma as well. I think there is potential that he could hopefully not copy Spielberg, but hopefully, set it in the world that we know and love, but just give it a new little twist. Give it a little freshness, maybe.
Yeah. That's all we need. Come on. Just some fresh indie. Before we wrap this up, though, I do have to, with Pete not here, I need to bring in some Fever Dream discussion. Do you think that in Indy's other life as a space pirate in Star Wars, do you think he has ever been in danger, or has he ever worried about ending up in the space between spaces, like with hyperspace and all that?
Well,
I think travel.
I wonder if that's where he smuggles.
Oh,
yeah. Maybe that's where he smuggles. He like the cargo hold that everybody hides in. That might be a portal to the space between spaces.
Oh, it could be. He's got tons of stuff in there. He's got the Ark of the Covenant in there.
It's like a Mary Poppins bag.
I was playing the new Lego Star Wars game, the Skywalker Saga, and you can find in during the Force Awakens levels, that ship that he has at the beginning, Han Solo, you find the Ark of the Covenant in there if you know where to look. So maybe that's exactly what's going on. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Well, that's all I got. Jerry, I don't know if your car battery can handle a telegraph machine or anything.
Well, let me see here. Let me see there's something coming in over the wire.
Do you have to start the car to make the telegraph work, or no?
There it is.
Okay.
Yeah, hang on. All right, now we got enough juice. This coming in over the car battery alternator thing. From Professor Christy Porter. When Indiana Jones had this experience, did he think that he was going to hang up his archaeology shoes and retire? Or do you think he would have continued? Did he think that there was anything left for him to do in his career?
Oh, so it could be like, oh, now I've seen everything. Or it could be like, oh my gosh, now that there's space between spaces, who knows what I'm going to discover or something.
He's thinking of all the other potential artifacts there could be in other realms, and maybe this is where he travels back in time and becomes Han Solo, and
maybe
travels across the galaxy, stealing things from other people.
Hold up. So I just have to say real quick. So all of the stuff that the aliens, collected is like this mint condition Nefertiti and Buddha and like amazing, whatever, Hatshepsut herself. And I mean, like every single thing that they got, did it all just get destroyed?
I think.
Well, if you look closely in the top right of the frame, one of the aliens is just flipping the bird to Indy.
Take that, Earth.
And on top of that, after 5,000 years, the Uga are all dead?
I think so. The Uga did not have they are not well used. They were not fairly used by the aliens.
But I'm supposed to be happy that these aliens showed up?
There's bells and triumphant music, Jerry. Of course you're supposed to be happy.
Yeah.
What don't you get about watching movies? It's a beautiful, triumphant, wonderful, wondrous thing.
And they leave?
Yep. Better hope we don't come back.
Were there any deleted scenes in this movie, or like alternate endings that were considered or shot or anything? I've never delved into the behind the scenes stuff on this.
Yeah, you tell us. I don't know. No, it sort of feels like they used every last bit that they had because they had to or something.
Yeah, right.
And you know what? That sucks.
That does suck.
That does suck.
That sucks.
I feel bad for everybody.
5,000. Boy, I'm glad Pete's not here. He'd be furious.
Let's not tell him next week.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a bunch of nothing.
Yeah.
Like they took their 5,000 or 10,000 years of existence and all civilizations. They showed everybody stuff or whatever. So they kind of ruined the fact that the ancient civilizations could have figured this stuff out themselves, which is, Pete, of course, nobody likes that narrative there. Right. It's like, the Incans could have figured that out.
Yeah.
And then we had to show them how to drink water. And then they did the whole thing. And
but
then
we didn't teach them how to swim when their whole town floods.
Yeah, they put a little mac cherry on top.
Yeah.
My biggest concern here, Jerry, is that somebody's at Home Depot car park or wherever you are is saying to security, "There's a guy. He's ranting at his steering wheel, just like that Oxley guy in that fourth Indiana Jones movie."
He's yelling about aliens and tribal people, and
I don't know. This is the third time I watched him piss into a Mountain Dew bottle.
What's he drinking at this point? It's a never-ending cycle of Mountain Dew. Oh my God. Well, on that note, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. This has been excellent. It's been a long time coming.
It has.
I'm sorry we didn't share a more exciting minute with you, or coherent. I don't know, substantial.
It's always a blast talking to you guys anyway, so I don't mind what minute I'm given. Yeah, and that counts for the fifth movie too.
Okay, yeah, we'll try to pick a better one for that one. And tell people where they can find your show and your documentaries and all your stuff.
Yeah, so if you just type in, the easiest way, is to just type in Filmumentaries, like documentaries, but with film at the front on Google, because there's no other word like it. And it goes straight to my Vimeo, to filmumentaries.com. And there's also the Filmumentaries podcast, which you can find on Apple and Amazon and Google and Spotify and everywhere else. I release 2 episodes a month, fingers crossed. Still haven't done any this month.
So far?
Well, I've got 22 days. I'm fine. And there's 50-something episodes that you can check back on. And if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at Jamie SWB, and on Instagram, Filmumentaries as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, and if you're at all a film nerd, you need to check out the show because it's great.
Thank you.
All your heroes
wonderful stuff, and it's really a testament to a lot of hard work, but obviously on your end, but also on the director's end too. You really do. You really dig in, and it's thorough. It's thorough.
Thanks. I go for thorough without boring. That's my plan.
Yeah, that's excellent.
That's my remit.
It's a beautiful goal.
Yeah.
And if you're at all a Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull nerd, like apparently we are, please come back next week and join us for minute 114 of Crystal Skull here on the Indiana Jones Minute.
Space?
Space? Space. Why aren't they from space?
Have you ever seen... Wait, Jamie, has Indy ever been that confused before? Like just sitting there with his pants around his ankles. Space?
Well, there was that girl in his class. So,
Saved by the Bell in that case.